word then that encodes that very difficult problem. So they began to use words that relate to problems that are right on the frontiers of solving, the ones that they're currently very, very concerned with. Now we'll try one more over there. Oh, you know I'm going to hide them again, don't you? Let me have them. Here we go, Beth. One more. Wait a second. Wait. Ready? Beth. Okay. We're working now on whether using the word helps them solve the cognitive problem, or whether just having solved the cognitive problem, it makes them particularly fascinated by why people use this odd sound in at this particular time. So we really still don't know which comes first, language and cognition. And the hypothesis that Alison Gopnik and I are developing is that they're really both maybe emerge at about the same time and sort of bootstrap on each other. Here's the keys. Ready? And we're going to go like this. You ready? Put them under here. Move the keys underneath the cloth. Then we're going to move them under this cloth. Then we're going to move them under this cloth. I'm going to bring out my hand. Where do you think they are? That's a good guess, but they're not there. And that's where you looked last time. Now what? Uh-oh. Oh, now that's pretty good going. That was a lot harder, wasn't it? Now what? How about just under there for good measure, huh? Oh, you're going to hide the keys yourself, huh?
John Austin was giving the William James lectures at Harvard. And there the question is, what constitutes meeting the felicity conditions on utterance? So the child, interestingly enough, isn't just learning syntax. He isn't just learning to mean, and he isn't just learning how to get things done with things in the world, but he's learning all three of them simultaneously. Each one of them is an enormous accomplishment. And that psycholinguist or linguist who looks at only one of these at a time, looks at the syntactic side, the semantic side, or just the pragmatic side, all in isolation, is bound to develop a theory which has one great big ear and no ear on the other side and no nose or mouth. I mean, you've got to keep these three things in balance, and it's punishingly difficult to do so. And I don't know, I mean, you know, what's the basis for the acquisition of these rule structures or maxim structures? Again, it's some function of mastering the complexities of the environment so that one can assign interpretations to events in a semiotic sense.
Just at this age, between 1 and 2 years old, when babies are let loose to explore, touch, build, they're learning an amazing 7 to 8 words a day and combining them according to the rules of their native language.
Are you making the cake?
Is there an innate basis, a neuropsychological device somewhere in the brain?
Yeah.
Should we be taking more notice how older children and adults prepare babies for language, as Jerome Brunner suggests?
If you take a look at it, the sort of thing that I have written about as formats that are used in language acquisition is, for example, in the referential format, you're very struck by the fact that what the mother is doing is holding the environment very constant in terms of her response to the child. And as the child picks up bits of language, under those circumstances, she then imposes an interpretation on what the child is doing so that the child can then predict what the results are of using certain utterance types, particularly what we speak of as the pragmatic or the illocutionary side of language.
Adults create a framework, or as Brunner calls it, scaffolding for the baby's talk.
Scaffolding is part of this preparation of input or control of input so that the child is not just having a language world thrown at. Remember, Noam early on used, I can't remember whether it was Noam or Jerry Katz, commented on the fact that as far as it's concerned, the child is essentially could even learn language on scraps from the language feast that was going on among the adults. That's not so.
What structures are available to children? There's Noam Chomsky's LAD, the language acquisition device, which now has a partner in Jerome Brunner's LAS, the language acquisition support system.
LAD was the language acquisition device in my format, so this language acquisition support system, which I also believe has some innate base, by the way.
Is there any way of proving either theory? You can certainly watch a child in a strange situation and see what language he or she uses. Here at the City University of New York, the scaffolding is described as a script or cognitive model. Diana is 2. She comes here once a week to make a pizza. She's learned all about it in the laboratory. Researcher Joan Lucciarello.
And we were looking to see when she picked up the event knowledge, like what comes next. After you put the flour on the board, you then have to roll out the dough. But we were also looking for acquisition of knowledge about the specific objects, their function in the event, and their names.
Diana is asked to name each object. Does she only use the name when she understands their use? When she has the script in her head?
Did you make a pizza? Where's the sifter? So she'd go from a position of learning them, inserting them into her own conceptual framework, and then using language to talk about that framework. Very good.
The research here is under the direction of Catherine Nelson.
And it's the cognitive model that the child builds up for the situation that provides in this case, the scaffolding for the talk. Now the mother, of course, it's not cognitive to the exclusion of social, and we assume that the social aspect is a very important part of it, and that the mother is perhaps vitally important in structuring that situation so that the child understands. But we think our data is very convincing in showing that, in fact, the child's understanding is what's crucial.
We're just going to go to the circus today.
This little girl has never been to the circus. She's given all the information and words concerning circuses by her mother. She plays freely with the toys, but her mother helps her to understand the event, to build the cognitive model, to interpret the language used. The mother enables her daughter to take part in the language game. The audience have taken their seats. Now the animals prepare their acts.
What's this?
I think that is a pen for the doggies. Okay.
They can see the elephants. They can see the elephants.
Okay.
Experiments like these help us to understand the context of language acquisition, but do they explain how children come out with whole phrases and sentences at around the age of 2? Jean Berko-Gleason.
When you say, how do children learn language? It's too simplistic to think that the child is either memorizing great hunks and simply spewing them back, or analyzing everything she or he hears and producing productive language in that sense.
Can you tell me how old you are? When was your birthday?
Jason is 2. Can we really say that he's unresponsive because he doesn't understand? Is it the complicated sentence or the reference to abstract notions like time and date that baffle him? Or do the strange surroundings affect him?
See how I'm cutting it. Can you see yourself, Jason? I'm just going to cut it. A little piece off. Here you are, look.
When he's faced with a curl of cut hair, he knows what it means and what word to use.
Go on there.
Go on.
But they also, probably in the early years, only learn rather globally the meaning of expressions like, it's time for bed now, it's time for your bath now. After, what does that mean to an infant? You hold up a towel in your hand, look at the bathroom and say, it's time for your bath now. Does that mean that the 2-year-old or the 1-year-old, the toddler, knows what it's time for your bath and now all mean and can use those words productively? Certainly not. The child has acquired, in terms of understanding, that very global kind of notion, and I think is true in both comprehension. That is, I think children first begin to associate routinized phrases with the everyday activities in their life, and then later may produce some rather routinized phrases as well without being able to analyze them.
Recently I've been looking at settings that recur frequently for the same child. Routinized settings, things like getting up in the morning or having snack or having a bath, going to bed at night, or reading the same book over and over again. Situations for which you can describe regularities and recurrences and predict what's going to happen in a particular time.
I'll sing this one. 3 blind mice.
Probably the richest data about this comes from children reading books with their parents, where they go back to the same book. In fact, children themselves insist on going back to the same book again and again, often to the distress of the parent. It's quite clear if you look at successive sessions of book reading between one mother-child pair that the things that the mother said about the picture on page 13 on at one session recur in the child's speech when looking at that same picture at the next session, or perhaps 2 or 3 sessions later. It's as if the child is storing up how you talk about this picture and reveals the degree to which the language he learns is dependent on the language he has heard only if the situation within which that language has been heard recurs. If the situation doesn't recur, then he might never reveal that learning.
Which one?
They are giving themselves the very best chance to hear the utterance again and again and finally do a proper linguistic analysis of it, the kind of analysis that would feed in to some syntactic acquisition system.
Yeah.
Syntax begins with putting 2 words together according to the rules.
I got a pumpkin house.
And what's this one?
Peter is nearly 3. Eve Clark wants to find